John's a retired trade union official. He used to work at a mill on this mystical island in t-Eilean, Dorcha. So he was quite used to advocating and campaigning. And I think people kind of rallied round him as being the central figure and their mouthpiece for opposition to the proposed wind farm. I deliberately picked somebody who was retired and a bit older.
Fitz Of Writing.
Hey there, Scribbles and Scratches. Welcome to the Fitz Of Writing. I am your host this episode, R.M. Johnson, and as always, this is for our creative edification as well as your entertainment. If you guys like the show that we're doing, you like our guests, you want to support us, please like, comment, and subscribe. Find our guest stuff, do the same for them on their platforms. This week, our humble benefactor and patron, Sir Dr. Duncan Cackleworth, Esquire, has brought us a humorous little tale, The Dark Island. So we searched the highlands to the hillside to find its author, Gordon Ian MacLeod. Welcome to the show, Gordon. How are you?
I'm very well, Ryan. Thank you for having me on.
Now, you have a very thick Scottish accent, and it does make me want to speak the same. I'm going to try my best not to let that happen. If I mess anything up, please correct my pronunciation of anything. But do my best just not to try. So today we're talking about the Dark Isle that has a proper name.
That's right. The book is called t-Eilean Dorcha, The Dark Island, and t-Eilean Dorcha is the Scottish Gaelic for the words the Dark Island.
I love it. This is you described it as a contemporary work of elemental fiction. That I have to say that is the first I've ever heard that sort of description. You want to kind of unravel that for us a little bit?
Sure, I'll try and give you a sort of overview of the work. It's got a very florid introduction, but really what t-Eilean Dorcha, The Dark Island, is a humorous novel. It's about a small island community who are forced to deal with what we call the wind rush. The islanders are facing the prospect of a wind farm development on their island and fearing that if the wind turbine development goes ahead, their life will never be the same again. They plan just how they intend to respond to that, and respond they do. Despite their often, how can I put it, their humorous antics, the novel actually has a very serious theme to it. There's no island in Scotland called t-Eilean Dorcha, The Dark Island, although there is one that is known by that nickname. I think it's Benbecula. But that title, t-Eilean Dorcha, it's maybe more well known in Scotland as being a popular old-fashioned song. What t-Eilean Dorcha, The Dark Island, represents is any island in any rural area in Scotland, the Highlands and Islands or beyond. And the reason is the novel serves as a polemic against industrialisation, which very much is happening across the Highlands and Islands of Scotland at the moment.
And so it's a novel about trying to preserve things, right? If I'm understanding that.
Yeah, it's about preserving your culture, but there's slightly political undertones to it as well. Just to give you a bit of background, in Scotland at the moment, from what I recall, there's something like 139 wind farm applications across the Highlands that are going on at the moment. And it's a lot of big companies coming in, and they're putting these planning applications forward. And the local communities are given things like 28 days to respond to things like 10,000 page documents.
Oh, wow.
And it's completely weighted against the community. So what they've done, 55, I think, community councils at some point last year came together And what they asked the Scottish government to do was have a moratorium, because although they aren't against the whole concept of renewable energy, indeed, that's one of the dangers that people might see the novel as being. It's not. What the community councils were arguing for was a moratorium so that there could actually be strategic planning in terms of how these wind farms are sited. So, as I say, there's a bit of political undertone to the novel as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's sad. That is, it sounds like it's like a topic that needs to be kind of aired out a bit. I mean, the Highlands are a very beautiful landscape. Unfortunately, there's not like a lot of it. In America, we do like wind farms and stuff like that, but there's a lot of land. There's a lot of undeveloped land. And so we kind of get away. I do hope it is a reality that they do come up with a way to strategically plan for something like that. Yeah, that's sad. It actually, the way you described it kind of reminds me of like how a lot of oil companies work or used to work, like in America, of just kind of, targeting families, offering them a low bid for some land, and then, just kind of taking all the resources. So in this story, this is a fictional work, and
Absolutely.
we're following John MacDonald, right?
That's right. John MacDonald's the main character. He's very much the, how can I put it, the ringleader of the local community who want to speak out against this development going ahead.
Who is he? Let's kind of break it down a little bit, as like expose him, who, like, his personality and what he gets into.
Yeah, John's a retired trade union official. He used to work at a mill on this mystical island in t-Eilean, Dorcha. So he was quite used to advocating and campaigning. And I think people kind of rallied round him as being the central figure and their mouthpiece for opposition to the proposed wind farm. I deliberately picked somebody who was retired and a bit older. I sometimes feel older people are not often portrayed as necessarily being very active in modern literature and in television as well. So I felt it was kind of important to give older people a bit more of a sort of prominence in terms of the main character in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something you don't see very often. I actually kind of like respect, like, Clint Eastwood has like a focus on that, of trying to create films that have like someone in their 60s or more, like being more active in their life and the world and the stories that he's telling. So it's great that you're out there doing something very similar, trying to push for that. This is, like we said, it's a fiction. There's no dragons here, but like what would you kind of classify this story as for someone that's shopping around? Is it like just a thriller, or is it I don't want to call it a mystery or a drama?
I would call it a contemporary work of eco-fiction. And although eco-fiction, with a very much an ecological emphasis, is on, how can we put it, very much the green agenda, this actually falls squarely within the green agenda. People would maybe see it as being opposing the green agenda, but it's quite the reverse, because what we're talking here, certainly in terms of the novel, is threats to the local environment, to the local wildlife, to people's way of life, to their culture, to the flora and fauna, and all these things that form the local environment and culture, in this instance on the island in t-Eilean, Dorcha.
And so what kind of other stories might you compare it to?
That actually, for me, has been one of my difficulties in finding a comparator to this novel. In a strange sort of way, I've always been a great fan of Compton Mackenzie, the man who wrote Whiskey Galore. I think it was maybe called something different in America when it came out. I can't remember what title they used, but Whiskey Galore, I think, is still widely known across the world for the novel that it is. So I think the humour aspect, in terms of an island and making a sort of stand as a community in relation to a specific issue. You could almost say there's a slight comparison in that. He also wrote a novel called Rockets Galore, which was really against the whole development of missiles being developed on the Western Isles. So, yeah, once again, maybe there's a comparator with that one too. But this is an island community seeing their way of life being threatened, and thinking, how can they actually influence change and preventing it from happening?
Well, I mean, from this is my take from the work you submitted. For those that don't know, keep an eye out for his Telltale. He did provide a Telltale for us. It was a very lovely story. I get the sense that when readers pick up your book, they're going to be expecting some very beautiful descriptions of landscapes and some deep character. I don't want to necessarily say development, but like just presence, character presence, very rich stories. From that Telltale you gave me, there's like a deep history that you kind of wove into there, and I think you said that was a part of a story you had already kind of been working on.
Yeah, years ago I wrote a short story about someone who was having to leave his island home. And although what I wrote for yourselves is very different, it was very much around that theme as well.
It's kind of inspired through it. And so The Dark Isle is your second book?
Yeah, it's my 8th novel.
8? I was way off. I missed.
No, don't worry. Don't worry.
I miscounted based on the submission information. That's my bad.
No problem.
So this is your 8th one.
Yeah.
You having a lot of experience in that. What are some deeper things in the story that people can expect? Any kind of love interest? Any like intrigue? Anything like that popping up deeper in the story?
The way I describe it, and this might sound a wee bit long-winded, what I'm going to say probably gives you a good insight into what motivates myself in terms of writing, which is probably one of your later questions, I'd suspect anyway. One of my favourite writers is a Scottish novelist, the late Neil Gunn, who died, I think, back in 1973. He was famous for a lot of novels, one in particular which people might recognise called The Silver Darlings. And I'd highly recommend his work if you're interested in Scottish literature at all. He was born in a village called Dunbeath in the county of Caithness, which is right in the far north of Scotland. I used to stay there many years ago as well. And a prominent feature in Dunbeath is a valley known as the Strath of Dunbeath, and it forms a very beautiful landscape, and it's a fine walk if ever your readers or listeners get a chance to take a walk there. And it makes several appearances in Neil Gunn's novels. Indeed, I go as far as to say that it had such a profound influence on him that Neil Gunn's view of the world is seen through the prism of the Strath. And I mention that because, having been brought up in a Scottish island myself called the Isle of Arran, I believe in a similar way to Neil Gunn that I have a tendency to view life through the prism of island life, and that's reflected very much in my novels such as t-Eilean Dorcha, and some of the plays that I've written in it as well. And on a personal level, I suspect my work helps me maybe retain a connection with island life, which I no longer have, aside from some of my family who still live back on the island. But that island perspective on the world very much influences so much of my writing, and it very much comes out, I think, in t-Eilean Dorcha, because things like community is very important. Communities, particularly where they're under threat, and the very issues, I say, of industrialisation that is going on across the Highlands and Islands, all these issues really come to the fore in the present day. you mentioned about the landscapes, and I said right at the start, I think the introduction to *t-Eilean, the first chapter, is very florid in its descriptions, and I hope I've managed to communicate with the reader in that first chapter some of the beautiful scenery that they might come across in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland. So there's all these sort of themes running through things, if that answers the question, which is in my distant memory what it was.
I'm sure you answered more than one in that, and that's great. I just want to let you go. I love like detailed descriptions of landscape. I think it's an art form because it's so easy to mess up. It's so easy to make boring. And I love when a writer can kind of master that, and like not just master it, but like they feel passionate about writing the description of a place.
Sure.
The fact that you're kind of the place you're writing about is fictional, but it's kind of hewn from a real life experience, just kind of makes it more beautiful in my mind. I did have a question. Like I know in the thing you submitted, it appears that this was self-published.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, okay. Very much so.
Can you kind of get into like your experience with the self-publishing process, just for our listeners?
Yeah, as I say, I've actually published 8 novels so far. The first one was published by a publisher called tartanmoon.com way back in the year 2009. But anything else thereafter, I have published myself and put it on Amazon, their Kindle store. So it's freely available for all my work. People will find on Amazon. Being a independent publisher, an independent writer who published his work himself, that gives you a lot of creative control over what the content obviously is, the timing in terms of when you release things, what cost you're going to actually charge for your work, and so on. But there's quite a lot of problems sometimes with being an independent author who self-publishes. What I called an advantage there, the timing, can also be a great disadvantage. And I'll give you an example of that. Way back in 2016, my 5th novel, which was called Carrot Toppers, was set in the northwest of England, and it was very much about a group of people who were affected by the policies of austerity which the government were following at that time. And I released the novel, can't remember what month it was, but I released the novel only to find 2 weeks later a very well-known film called I, Daniel Blake was released, and it won the Palme d'Or, and was really a big box office hit, certainly in the United Kingdom. I don't know about America, but it was very popular in Britain, and it absolutely overshadowed anything about my work.
That is unfortunate.
It's unfortunate, but that's what happens when you're an independent author. You're on your own. You're writing, you're publishing, you're editing, you're doing your own cover designs and everything. You cannot compete when you're up against a better infrastructure that maybe goes behind making a film.
So you did mention doing your own cover designs. Is that something you did, or did you like reach out to someone and find someone to work with?
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I have to be honest, sometimes I use what's on Amazon, the Kindle site itself, and just maybe put some really beautiful photographs in. Like the cover for *t-Eilean Dorcha is a very simple one. It is a picture of an island that sits just off Arran, where I come from, called the Holy Isle. And it's very, very appropriate because it looks very darkened and silhouetted from the picture, so it actually fits perfectly the dark island theme of that novel. But what I do with some of my novels, and I say I'm very lucky, I've got a sister who is a graphic designer, and she kindly sometimes designs some of the covers for my novels for me.
Well, that's nice.
It is. It's very fortunate.
Yeah. Not everyone has that luck. Sean and I are trying to eventually, hopefully one day we can hire an artist for the show. Right now it's just me. It's just me making making stuff. Unless it's animated, then it's Sean. I feel like we've kind of talked about the book. We've got it out there. If you guys are interested in that, please look it up. I want to open it up a little bit more for a general discussion. This is probably for more the writers than the readers, but readers are also welcome to listen. You are not only a proud Scotsman, but you're also a playwright. That's what you mentioned in there. You have a few different plays that you've released. It sounds like you have like a history, like a long history of writing. Can you tell us like where your story begins as a writer?
Sure. As I said, my first novel I started writing in 1995, so quick calculation, that's 31 years ago. Time does fly right enough.
Oh, jeez,
But
yeah.
like many people, yeah, I know. Like many people who I know who have appeared in your program, a lot seems to go back to their secondary education, their high school. That's what we call it in Scotland anyway, it's your high school. And like many people, I found at high school I wasn't really very clever, if I'm honest with you, or very good at anything. But for some reason, my essays that I handed in at school always seemed to get the top marks for the class, except for one occasion, which I'll maybe try and remember to come back to. But I also supposedly said to somebody, not that I can recall ever saying it myself, I was asked what I wanted to be when I left school, and I said to them I want to be a writer. So obviously somewhere in my psyche, this was a motivating force. I didn't really do much writing once I left school, but as I say, come 1995, I did start putting pen to paper. And in 1995, it was very much pen to paper because I didn't have a word processor or anything at that point in time. And that led to my first novel, which was called Silicon Glen, which was actually longlisted for the Dundee International Book Prize in the year 2000. But being very naive, I kind of went in a huff because it only got on the long list. It didn't get any further, so I basically shoved it in a drawer and left it for about 8 years. And then I saw a new internet publisher coming on stream who was looking for work, and I submitted it to them, and they decided that they would publish it. Going back to my early writing experiences, coming from a very beautiful island, Arran, there's a picture on my wall which is of Brodick Bay, which is the main place you sail into on Arran. And as you can see, it's a very beautiful part of the world.
It very is.
You cannot help but be inspired to do something. I used to write a wee bit of music when I was younger, but I was never very good at that either. So it's almost as if you have some compelling force that you must create somehow when you come from somewhere like Arran, and I obviously found my voice through writing.
I gotta say, like, it's from being from America. Like, this is gonna sound very like anti-American, but it's not. It's just we have so many structures and everything, and like everything's built around city life and stuff like that. Like, of course, we have things out in the country and undeveloped land, but I'm always jealous of other countries because they have so much like beauty in them, and you don't really have to go that far to find them. And I think it's just inspiring, like just to look at that picture you have up on the wall. That's a beautiful scape of land, and I'm sure you can find just about anything like it, within eye shot of anywhere on the islands. And so like it always kind of makes me a little bit jealous when I'm just like, other countries, they just have so much out there to explore, to see, to just look at and be amazed, and to inspire people. I'm sure that's true in America too, but I just generally feel like you guys have a little bit of advantage when it comes to just feeling inspiration from your surroundings.
We're often overawed, Ryan, when we come over to America. My wife's from America, she's from Atlanta. So I go to America quite a bit, and my eldest daughter, she lives in Cathedral City near Palm Springs in California. So I'm over quite a wee bit between Florida and California. And there's lots. in America that is very exciting for people who maybe come particularly from islands and maybe more rural environments. In fact, I've written a 9th novel, which is called Parallel Experiences, which is currently out in submission to literary agents. So if there's any that are interested, please get in touch with me.
Yes, please do.
Part of it is set in Pembroke Pines in Florida. So as I say, there's always appeal no matter what country you go to.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think being in it for so long, you just don't see it anymore. I guess that's probably my experience. You are a playwright, and I don't get the opportunity to talk to many playwrights, and so I do kind of want to take this moment, this opportunity to discuss like what the big difference between like writing something like long form narrative or even like a short story versus like writing a play. Like how does that work for you?
Yeah. I think this is where character development, which is I think something you want me to touch on, comes into things quite a bit. In terms of dialogue, I always felt, rightly or wrongly, that my novels usually had good excerpts of dialogue in them and that helped drive the story on. And I think when you do playwriting, dialogue is absolutely fundamental, obviously, to the whole construct of the play. So probably sounds a bit strange. I never really see for myself anyway that much difference between sitting down to write a novel than sitting down to write a play. The story is very much driven through the characters, whether it's purely through the dialogue in the play or it's through some of the narrative plus the dialogue in a novel. The characters very much drive the whole story through the play. An example I'll give you, I had a play that was picked up and produced by a multimedia theatre and distribution company called The Grey Hill in Scotland. They produced a play of mine in 2022 called Where Did All the Flowers Come From? And it's a story, I'll try and keep this brief, about 3 sisters who are standing at their mother's grave on the first anniversary of her death. It's their way of paying respect to their mum. One of the sisters, the eldest sister, is, I wouldn't say she's obnoxious, but she's maybe quite arrogant in her character. And I was brought up with 3 sisters as well, and probably some of the traits of my elder sisters find their way into this slightly obnoxious character. So I must give apologies to my sisters Shona and Elaine, who were my elder sisters, if they see any of these traits that they find quite annoying in this character. But that very much is what happens. You pick up character traits from people's personalities and they find their way into your characters in novels, but very much into your characters in books. So, as I say, the characters and their dialogue very much drive the story throughout a play. Whereas the narrative that you have in a novel lets you maybe give slightly different perspectives than the immediate that you see with a character in a play, if that makes sense.
It does. I think that kind of actually naturally leads me into the big question that, we gave you a little bit of notice on, which is how do you approach character development? Not necessarily like their initial set, but like how do you go about like changing them throughout your story? Like what do you feel like is powerful to write when you're doing those things?
Yeah, I think how the characters form to start with is just really what I was saying. Very often your experience in life, you'll come across people and something will really stand out about them and they'll find their way into other characters in your novels or your plays. So that was the example I gave you of my sisters there, how they very much influenced the psychological makeup of the elder sister in this play. My first 2 novels, which was called Silicon Glen and the second one was called 76, they had a female character in it called Rhoda. And she was very much, how can I put it, the love interest of this young man who is a main character in both these novels. And she is probably what any person's vision of beauty is and perfection. She was very much besotted by this main character. She was idolised in every way. And the whole idea for her very much came about, obviously, from your own experiences in terms of how you see other people, but she very much was a personification of the island where the novel was set. So all her beautiful features, as I say, are really the personification of the beauty of the island. So my characters really are an amalgam of all these sorts of things. Another thing which I'm sure other people will have said to you on your shows, and you'll know yourself, once you write a character, they tend to write their own stories as well. And you don't always know necessarily where it's going to lead. Obviously, you've given birth to a character, but they can take you on journeys that you maybe just did not really quite anticipate when you started to plan out in your head or on your paper your storyline.
So I take it, just based on that, you're more of a, like, what they call a pantser, where you're just kind of like letting the story take its thing. You're not really shaping it, outlining it too much.
Yeah, I'm both. I think in my early days I'd be very much a pantser. I think probably for my last 3 novels and one of my plays, it's been a lot more structured and outlined.
I mean, I'm very much a pantser. Like, I like to, I basically think in my head, like, I want to get from point A to point B. Let's kind of start creating a scenario, where they begin, where they go. I have an admiration for people that can, like, plot everything out. It just feels not fun to me.
Yeah,
like, I don't understand where, like, you've thought of a thing, you've planned it out, and then you've just rewritten everything that you planned out. It doesn't seem very fun, but I'm not going to knock anyone's writing style. It's just not for me.
No, I get where you're coming from. As I say, I very much used to be a pantser in my early writing, definitely, even up to about the last 3-4 years. But I increasingly found, particularly with the last novel that I wrote, I would go to bed, and I know you have sleeping problems too. But the amount of things that come into your head, and I would get up and I would stick it in my phone in the notes sort of app that you've got, and then I'd try and go back to sleep, and then the next bit came, and eventually you were virtually just planning out a whole novel in the middle of the night on your phone. So that's how very much my last few novels have come about, as being planned entities.
Yeah, I do struggle from that as well. If the urge, if I can't let it go, I'll have to get up. I can't, like, write myself a note. I have to literally get up, get back onto the computer, open up my thing, and, like, rewrite the thing I'm doing. Because generally what I'm thinking about is a scene or is some chunk of dialogue that I just can't let go. But I tend to have a really good mind for, like, thinking on things, and I take the Stephen King approach, which is, like, writing things down is, like, the fastest way to immortalize bad ideas. And he's like, if it's really good, it'll be there in the morning, kind of thing. So for the most part, I try to just, like, all right, I've thought it up, I'll write it later. If it's good, it's there. Otherwise, it's just like I'm thinking up a thing and it's just eating me up, and I'm like, it's so good as I'm thinking it, and I'll just sit there for hours in my bed, and I'll be like, all right, I in order just to save my sanity and go to sleep and potentially wake up for work, I gotta go write.
Yeah.
So it is a battle, but it kind of leads me to, like, what your thoughts on like what makes a great story.
Yeah. I think across genres, the one thing that stands out for me, and this probably almost goes against what I was just saying there, the important thing for me in a story is there's got to be a heavy dose of realism. Maybe with science fiction, yes, or fantasy, there can be quite a lot of artistic license in that. But ultimately, this is just my own personal view. Stories that I enjoy very much have some basis in reality. Even Star Trek is looking at science fiction as an example. There's something still very grounded and realistic in the whole idea behind Star Trek.
Yeah, I agree. Realism is good. I tend to write a lot of fantasy and stuff like that, high fiction. So I try not to get too realistic, but I think it's important, like you said, to kind of keep certain things grounded because then it feels more real to the readers. In your submission, we're going to kind of deviate a little bit because I forgot this part. In your submission, you mentioned that you were in a child's film.
That's right,
what was
yes.
that?
I forgot I even mentioned that. Way back in 1976 when I was 9. It was a British, I can't remember what the organisation was, but basically they made British films for children. And one of the directors of the film company was a man called Michael Alexander, who was brought up on Arran. And he came back and he filmed a film called Nosey Dobson. I have searched for this film for years and never found it yet. That's got an entry in IMDb, but there's no actual video of it or anything. And I think a lot of these films were sort of taped over or scrubbed in time thereafter. But yes,
or at least you hope so, right?
I hope so. But I got about 4 or 5 months off school for this. It was brilliant. You couldn't ask for more. You had hamburgers and everything every day from the van. And for that 4 or 5 months, I think I made a 1 second appearance in the whole film.
Hey, some people don't even get that. Some people get cut completely. So.
That's true. That's true.
So
Well,
I take it you don't
glimpse.
have any. I take it you don't have any future aspirations for acting.
Absolutely none whatsoever.
So you write stage. Well, you write plays. Do you write? I assume those are for the stage. Do you write screenplays?
Yes, in my first book of drama, which is called Arran Dramas, because they're all set on Arran, the last script in that book is a film called Molios. It's a horror, and it is set in Arran. It goes back to the Viking Age and switches between the Viking Age and contemporary times. There is a Viking spirit who manages to, how can I put it, possess one of the main characters. Almost, it's not like The Exorcist, but it has sort of underlying themes that would be parallel to that.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I feel like that's like a missed opportunity from a lot of people. Just like Scottish horror. It's not something you hear a lot of, but especially if you get into like the supernatural element of horror, there's a lot of Scottish lore out there that could be pretty crazy.
Well, if you've got any film producers out there, the script is there. You are welcome to it.
Yeah,
I actually did submit it to a competition once, and the only feedback I got was it wasn't written in the format that they wanted. But the reason it wasn't in the format is because it was formatted for a book that could be read just like any other book. It went into Arran Dramas along with all the other plays.
Well, have you ever considered like trying to redo it? I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah, I could do.
Reformat it, I guess.
As I say, if anybody's interested, please give me a call.
Yes, please do. This is kind of all ramping up to what is quickly becoming my favorite question I ask everyone so far this season, I think. I think we've asked every guest. And this is what I call the truth time question. You have to tell the truth. It can be anything. There's a lot of wiggle room in here. but it can be anything. But I want to hear
Like wiggle room.
I want to hear your genuine thoughts. I've heard some political answers. I don't want those. People, keep your political opinions to yourself in regards to this question. But it's, what do you hate the most about modern fiction that is written today?
Probably not a good subject to answer that question. I think it probably goes back to one of my earlier answers. I like realism in novels that I read, and that's just a personal taste. A lot of stuff that I read can be realistic, but sometimes
you feel like it's breaking the immersion too much.
Yeah, it's not so much that. It's sometimes when I read literary fiction in particular, you can have a novel that is beautifully written, but it's almost as if there is a lack of a storyline. There's no great drama in it. It's like the day in the life of somebody that just got out of bed, and you get the whole life story in a day, and that's it. And that's maybe just my ignorance and naivety and things coming into play. But I like a story where there's an actual theme and a conclusion, a drama, and a resolution.
No, I am 100% with you. I do think that is a misstep. I think some authors do that as a means to kind of set like a baseline for like a normal life or something before things kind of kick off. But there is such a thing as staying in the pocket too long. And, like walking us through every minute of someone's morning routine. It's probably not the best way to go about it. I've had a lot of fun talking to you. I hope we have you back on the show. I do want to, again, take this time to thank you for coming on this time. I have some quick shout outs. Before I get into that, is there anything else you want to kind of promote or let people know about? I don't know if you have a copy of your work like on hand.
Yeah, so say t-Eilean Dorcha, that is the novel, The Dark Island. All you have to do, if anybody's interested in my work, is go onto Amazon and type in my name, Gordon Ian MacLeod. The only thing I would say, please spell it correctly. It's not like Sam MacLeod, which used to be an American policeman who went on horseback. I think it was a TV drama from many years ago. MacLeod is spelled MacLeod. And if you type my name, Gordon Ian MacLeod, on Amazon, you'll find all my work there. So please do go on. And if you do get any of my work, please write a review. I'm always delighted to hear what people say. And can I just say, in case I forget at the end, thank you very much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, Ryan.
Thank you, Gordon. I appreciate that. We try to make all of our guests feel comfortable and accessible. And again, we want to drive as many people to you as we can. Is there where can people find you?
Yeah, on Instagram and Threads, my handle, I think they call it handle nowadays, it's at Gordon Ian MacLeod. Very easy. I also have my own website, which is gordonmacleod.weebly.com.
And if anyone didn't understand that because of his impeccable deep Scottish accent, I believe Sean's going to put those links in the description. I do want to let everybody know, remind everyone, we do have the incredible contest going on right now. You submit your work, the winner will get top tier editing services from Kimberly Huther. There's just some requirements in there. If you click the submission link, it'll explain all that stuff to you. But we're reading these entries in real time, so please submit them sooner rather than later. Don't hold back. The sooner Sean and I can get our eyes on them, the sooner we can kind of place you in there. Keep an eye out for Gordon's Telltale. We're also doing our monthly Telltale. Keep an eye out for that. And again, we've created a Reddit society, a community. It's called the Inkwell Society. It's the best way to keep in direct communication with me, Sean, or potentially Sir Dr. Duncan Cackleworth, Esquire. It's a fun environment. We try to allow for free promotion of people's things, and we upload all of our stuff here, videos from here, from YouTube and all that stuff. If you guys, again, like what we're doing on this channel, you like the guests we're bringing on, and you want to support us, support them, like, comment, and subscribe, or prescribe. And again, I wanted to thank Gordon Ian MacLeod for coming onto the show. Check out his book, and I think we'll fade to black from there.